By 8:12 on Monday morning, my receptionist was already standing when I stepped out of the elevator. She did not say good morning. She came around the front desk, lowered her voice, and pressed a pink message slip into my hand like it might burn through my skin. "The bar called," she whispered, twice. The hallway outside my suite still smelled like fresh floor wax and coffee from the lobby kiosk downstairs. Through the glass wall of reception, I could see my 9 o'clock clients already seated in conference room A, their leather folders stacked neatly in front of them, both of them pretending not to look at me. My building sat in the center of downtown, 4 floors above a title company and across from the county courthouse. On most mornings, that view made me feel steady. That morning, the words on the message slip made my hands cold. State Bar Intake. Urgent verification requested complaint filed overnight under attorney's name. Under my name, not against me. Under my name. I looked up at Paige. "Who took the call?" "I did the first time. Then Mr. Harmon from Intake left a voicemail on your direct line. He said the filing included your bar number, your signature, and a request for immediate review. He said he needed to confirm whether you submitted it." A request for immediate review. My stomach tightened once, hard. That phrase mattered. A routine grievance could sit for days before anyone cared whether the formatting was messy or the facts were weak. But a complaint that looked like it came from a licensed attorney inside her own firm, especially one asking for urgent review, got attention fast. It suggested insider knowledge. It suggested panic. It suggested that the lawyer filing it believed something serious had to be preserved before evidence disappeared. It also suggested somebody wanted my office poisoned before business hours. I started toward my office and stopped when I saw my door already half open. Paige followed my eyes and swallowed. "I didn't let her past reception," she said quickly. "Not exactly. She told Martin downstairs there was a family emergency, and by the time I got off the phone with Intake, she was already in there." Martin was the lobby guard. 65, polite, unfailingly calm, and far too trusting when someone wore pearls and said the word mother. I stepped into my office and found my own mother sitting in the client chair across from my desk, ankles crossed, handbag on her lap, eye as composed as if she were waiting for a lunch reservation. She was wearing a pale camel coat with the collar folded neatly back, lipstick perfectly set, silver hair pinned low at the nape of her neck. My office windows threw morning light across the glass credenza behind her, and she looked completely at home in my space. That bothered me more than the complaint for one brief, ugly second. She looked up and smiled without warmth. "There you are," she said. "You needed discipline." She said it in the same tone she had used when I was 12, and she found out I had hidden a report card in my dresser drawer. Calm, clean, certain. Like punishment was not emotion. It was administration. I closed the door halfway, not fully. My clients could already hear her voice through the glass anyway. And the last thing I was going to do was trap myself in a private room with a woman who had apparently spent her Sunday night impersonating me to the state bar. "What did you file?" I asked. She tilted her head. "I corrected a problem." That wasn't my question. Her gaze moved over my suit, my trial bag, the stack of red-weld folders under my arm. "You think because you rent a nice office and keep your voice low, nobody can touch you. That's been your issue for years." 3 weeks earlier, I had refused to let my younger brother use my trust account as a temporary pass-through for money from a failed condo deal. He had called it a bridge. I had called it what it was, an invitation to lose my license. My mother had called me selfish. After that, and she had left me 3 voicemails in one afternoon saying family should come before technicalities. Now she was sitting in my office before 9 in the morning, while the state bar asked whether I had filed an emergency complaint using my own name. I set my trial bag down slowly. "Paige," I said without looking away from my mother, "move the Harpers to conference room B. Tell them I'm handling a filing issue and I'll be with them in 10 minutes. Paige nodded from the doorway. And call Martin downstairs. Tell him I need the lobby camera footage from 7:30 forward preserved." That finally made my mother's eyes sharpen. "For a family matter?" she asked. "Really?" "For an unauthorized entry into my office before opening." Her mouth flattened. "Don't be theatrical." I almost laughed at that, but I was too angry to waste the breath. Instead, I sat down, woke my monitor, and opened the voicemail Mr. Harmon had left on my direct line. Paige had already transcribed part of it onto the message slip. "Miss Sloan, this is Daniel Harmon with Attorney Discipline Intake. We received an overnight submission bearing your name, bar number, and signature block. Before the matter is routed, we need to confirm whether you personally submitted the complaint and whether the request for expedited handling is authentic. Please contact us as soon as possible." My mother watched my face while the recording played. Not the way a worried relative watches you, not the way someone watches a stranger either. More like a person waiting for the effects of medicine she has already administered. I opened my call log, hit redial. Orrin put the line on speaker long enough for Paige to stand beside the desk with a legal pad. I wanted a witness in the room. I wanted contemporaneous notes. I wanted every second anchored. The call connected on the third ring. "Attorney Discipline Intake, Harmon." "This is Evelyn Sloan," I said. "Bar number 58419. I'm returning your call regarding an overnight complaint." A pause. Typing. "Thank you, Ms. Sloan. Before I discuss the file, I need to verify a few points. Can you confirm the mailing address associated with your license?" I did. He asked for the last 4 of the phone number tied to my attorney registration. I gave him that, too. Another pause. More typing. Then his tone changed. "All right," he said, "thank you. I can tell you now the submission appears irregular." My mother's fingers tightened once around the handle of her handbag. "What exactly was filed?" I asked. "A misconduct complaint naming your firm and referencing client trust activity, contact with represented parties, and alleged alteration of settlement distributions," he said. "The complainant field lists you by name. The cover note states you are reporting your own office before others can destroy the proof. It requests immediate intervention and records preservation." Paige's pen stopped for half a second, then started moving faster. My mother kept her face still, but she looked at the monitor for just a fraction too long. "Read me the submission note," I said. He hesitated. "Ordinarily, I would not read intake text over an open line without additional verification. You already verified me." "Yes, but because the complaint was submitted in your name, I'm also required to confirm whether you authored it. The reason I called is that certain elements did not align with your registration file." "Such as?" He exhaled quietly, like he had been waiting for permission. "The callback number in the complaint is not yours. The listed contact email is not the email on your attorney record, and the signature appears to be an inserted image, not a portal-generated signature." I looked across the desk at my mother. She did not flinch. Instead, she said softly enough that only we could hear it, "Maybe now you'll learn not to embarrass your brother." That was the first time she said brother instead of family, and that mattered too. "Mr. Harmon," I said, "I want a copy of the complaint and the intake notes sent through your secure portal immediately. I also want the source metadata preserved." "We've already flagged the file for identity review," he said. "One moment." I heard another keyboard, a paper shuffle. Then a second voice came faintly in the background, a woman this time asking him to confirm the discrepancy field. He came back on the line. "Ms. Sloan, I have intake specialist Dana Kessler with me. She reviewed the upload packet. Dana, can you state the note?" The woman's voice came on, clipped and professional. "Identity mismatch pending manual review," she read. "Submitting party used attorney name and bar number, but submission credentials do not match verified account history." I leaned back in my chair, but only because my knees had suddenly started feeling unreliable. Did it come from my portal login? I asked. No, ma'am, she said. That's why we halted routine routing. My mother's mouth moved almost imperceptibly, as if she had bitten the inside of her cheek. Then how did it get through? I asked. Our public complaint form permits external submission, Dana said. But when a complainant identifies herself as a licensed attorney and requests expedited review, the file is manually screened. I stared at the skyline beyond the window for 1 second, just to steady the pulse in my throat. Then I said, "Read me the intake notes. All of them." A brief silence. "Ma'am," Dana said carefully, "this wasn't filed by you." I heard Paige inhale beside me. "What makes you sure?" I asked. "The signature matches the image block on a PDF attachment, not a live signature capture," she said. "It is visually identical down to the compression marks and edge distortion. It appears to have been copied and pasted." My mother finally shifted in her chair. Just once, not much, just enough for me to see that the column had hairline cracks in it. "And the source line?" I asked. More typing. Then Dana spoke more slowly. "Bar intake note," she read. "Submitted from external browser session at 11:43 p.m. Source tag linked to business network registration." She stopped. I looked at Paige. Paige looked at me. "Read it," I said. Dana did. "Submitted from Caldwell Property Group Guest Wi-Fi." My mother's real estate office. The same office where she still kept a private suite, 2 printers, are in a locked file cabinet full of family documents she'd never believed I had a right to refuse her. No one spoke for a full 2 seconds. Even through the door, I could hear the muffled movement of my clients shifting in conference room B. Then my mother rose, smoothing the front of her coat with both hands, as if the conversation had become dull. "This is what happens," she said, "when a daughter forgets who built her." I stood too. "No," I said. "This is what happens when someone thinks a copied signature and a guest network don't leave a trail." For the first time that morning, her expression changed in a way I recognized from childhood. Not remorse, not shame, calculation. She had not come to my office to apologize, or even to intimidate me. And she had come to watch whether the bar would do enough damage before I got control of the file. I pressed the mute button on the phone and looked at Paige. "Email Mr. Harper and tell him I need 20 more minutes," I said. "Not 15, 20. Then call Martin back and ask for the elevator log with the lobby footage. I want the time she came up, who signed her in, and whether anyone came with her." Paige was already moving before I finished the sentence. My mother picked up her handbag. "This has gone far enough," she said. "You've made your point." "No," I said. "The bar made mine." She gave me a thin smile, the kind she used when she thought patience alone could force other people back into their old roles. "Evelyn, if you start treating this like fraud, you'll only embarrass yourself. I was trying to correct something before other people saw it." "Other people already saw it?" "That is because you refused to help your brother." There it was again. Not family, not principle. My brother. I unmuted the line. "Dana, are you still there?" "Yes, ma'am." "I need you to preserve the full upload packet, including the timestamp, user agent string, any entered contact fields, and the attached file names. I also want the intake routing suspended pending identity fraud review." "We've already placed the matter in restricted status," she said. "No disciplinary routing until identity is resolved." "Good. Was a confirmation email sent when the complaint was submitted?" "Yes." "To what address?" A pause. Keyboard clicks. She read it slowly. discipline.review.file@protonmail.com. My mother's face did not change, but her eyes shifted to the window. Not to me, not to Paige, to the window. People always do that when they realize the details are no longer abstract. "Was that address used anywhere in my attorney registration or previous correspondence with the bar?" I asked. "No, ma'am." "Was there a phone number in the complaint?" "Yes, it ends in 9184. not my number. Read the attachment names. A shorter pause this time. Primary complaint, PDF. Supporting Exhibit 1, Trust Ledger Summary. Supporting Exhibit 2, Signed Settlement Page. Supporting Exhibit 3, Office Contact Sheet. I felt my spine go cold. My office contact sheet was not public. It sat in our internal shared drive and in paper form at reception for after-hours emergencies. It listed direct lines, extension numbers, the old fax number I kept meaning to remove, and the private cell phone for my office manager. You did not accidentally attach that unless you had either been inside my office or had gotten a file from someone who had. My mother saw something in my face and lifted her chin. "You're making yourself dramatic again." I ignored her. "Dana," I said, "on Exhibit 2, the signed settlement page, can you see the source file name or only the label?" "I can see both," she said. "The uploaded label says signed settlement page, but the underlying file name appears to be ev_sloan_sigblock_final.png. My mother turned toward me too quickly. That was enough. My signature block was an image clip I had once sent to my old office manager for letterhead formatting, years ago before I opened my own firm. Nobody should have had that exact file except me and maybe one forgotten archived folder. It was not a live scan from a recent document. It was a stored image asset. Something else landed in my head at the same time. 3 months earlier, when my mother had insisted on helping me organize old family papers after my father's surgery, she had spent almost 40 minutes alone in my home office while I took a call from a client on the back patio. At the time, I had only been annoyed that she alphabetized nothing and criticized everything. Now I saw her standing near my desk again, opening drawers with that same tidy, entitled calm. "Dana," I said, "can you tell whether the complaint was drafted all at once or edited over time?" "That I cannot see from the intake portal," she said, "but I can see the submission sequence. The complainant entered personal details first, then uploaded 3 exhibits, then replaced the complaint PDF once before final submission." "Replaced it?" "Yes. There are 2 versions in the log. The first failed because the signature field was blank." My mother stood up so abruptly the chair legs scraped the floor. "I'm not listening to this nonsense," she said. I reached over and hit record on the conference microphone puck sitting on the corner of my desk. We used it for remote mediations and client calls. A small red light came on. "I am," I said. She stared at the light. "Are you recording me?" "I'm preserving an interaction in my office after an identity-based filing event. You're free to leave." That was not a bluff. In my state, one-party consent applied, and my office was not the place to get delicate about preserving admissions. Her mouth tightened. "Or you always did love rules when they protected you." "No," I said. "I love rules when they create a trail." Paige stepped back in with her tablet and a printout. "Martin sent stills from the lobby," she said, "and building management sent the elevator log." I held out my hand. She gave me the printout first. 7:38 a.m. Lobby camera, my mother at the security desk, pearl earrings, camel coat, handbag on left arm, smiling at Martin. 7:41 a.m. elevator bank, my mother alone. 7:43 a.m. 4th floor corridor, my mother outside my office suite, keying something into her phone. 7:45 a.m. Reception camera, my mother entering my office while Paige was on the phone at the front desk. Time-stamped, clean, boring, excellent. The tablet showed the elevator access log. None the guest pass had been issued under the name Ruth Caldwell, my mother, and the host field listed my suite number. Martin had typed family emergency in the notes. My mother saw the stills upside down from across the desk and gave a quiet, contemptuous laugh. "You've proved I visited my daughter. Congratulations." Paige handed me a second page. "This came from our network admin," she said. "You asked me last month to put reception and your office printer on separate access because of the old scanner issue. He still had the registration map." I took it and read. Office guest network access history. External device connected Sunday night at 11:12 p.m. Device label RC iPad. Duration 46 minutes. Printer handshake at 11:26. Scan to email activity at 11:29. Destination failed. Retry destination failed. USB export detected at 11:32. My mother's real initials. Not proof beyond all doubt yet, but enough to change posture, enough to turn a weird family incident into a documented misuse of systems. I put the page flat on my desk. "You were in my office network last night?" I said. She did not answer. "You tried scan to email twice." Still nothing. "You failed twice, then exported to USB." My mother looked at Paige, not at me. "Would you give us a minute?" "No," I said. Paige stood perfectly still. The silence stretched long enough for the city noise outside the windows to come back into my awareness. The faint horn from the intersection below, the hum of HVAC, the distant elevator bell in the hall. Then my mother did what she always did when facts started hardening around her. She reframed. "I was preserving evidence," she said. "Your brother told me you were holding documents from him." "Which documents?" "The condo settlement papers." I let that sit for half a beat. My brother Nolan had never been a client of mine. I had reviewed one purchase agreement for him at a family barbecue, unpaid, while he stood over the grill with a beer in his hand and acted like asking a lawyer to read a six-figure document between hamburger flips was normal. When the deal imploded, he blamed everyone except the developer, the lender, and himself. Especially me. I said, "There are no condo settlement papers in my office for Nolan. You handled things for him?" I refused to. She blinked once. Not because she had forgotten, because she knew I was saying it out loud in front of a witness. "You still had the records," she said. "No, what I had were my own client files, one which you entered this office to search." Her shoulders drew back. "I am your mother. And that gives you access to my law firm? It gives me the right to stop you from hurting your own family." That was the first sentence she had given me all morning that sounded enough like a motive to matter. On the speaker, Dana said carefully, "Mrs. Sloan, based on what I'm hearing, you may want our office to note potential unauthorized use of identifying information and supporting documents." "I do," I said. "We can add that right now. We can also lock the complaint packet from deletion." "Do it." Keyboard clicks. "Done," she said. My mother's gaze snapped to the phone. "Delete what?" I almost smiled. There it was. Not innocence. Not confusion. Concern about deletion. "Dana," I said, "please read back the last notation you entered." She did. "Yeah, reporting attorney denies authorship. Intake packet preserved. Identity misuse alleged. Submission credentials inconsistent with attorney registration. Supporting document origins disputed. No disciplinary routing pending fraud review." Each phrase landed harder than the one before it. My mother opened her handbag and pulled out her phone. I knew that look too. Not panic. Coordination. "Nolan doesn't need this kind of ugliness," she said. "Nolan started it." "I started nothing," came a male voice from my office doorway. I turned. My brother was standing there in a navy quarter zip and gray slacks, one hand still on the half-open door, like he had timed his entrance for maximum effect. He looked from me to our mother to the speakerphone on my desk and then to the printed logs in Paige's hand. He smiled. It was small, but it was real. And that scared me more than if he had walked in angry, because it meant he thought he still had another card to play. Nolan shut the door behind him with the side of his hand, like he belonged there. He had our mother's mouth and our father's posture, but none of our father's restraint. He wore expensive shoes, a watch he could not really afford, and the kind of relaxed expression men use when they think somebody else is about to clean up the damage for them. He glanced at the speakerphone on my desk, the red light on the conference mic, then at Paige's notes. "That was unnecessary," he said. No, I said. Unnecessary was filing a bar complaint under my name. He gave a small shrug, as if we were discussing a scheduling mistake. You're acting like this is criminal. It was a report. A forged report. My mother said nothing, and she stayed standing near the window, handbag tucked under her arm now, chin lifted, the posture she used in church when she wanted people to think silence was dignity instead of strategy. Nolan looked at the phone. Who's still on the line? Intake. His jaw tightened for a second. Barely. Then he smoothed it over. Fine. Then let them hear this too. Nobody filed anything false. We were reporting conduct that needed to be reviewed. I turned back to the speaker. Dana, are you still there? I am. Please note that my brother Nolan Caldwell has entered my office and is now claiming involvement in the submission. There was a pause on the line, followed by more typing. Noted, Dana said. Nolan's smile thinned. I didn't say involvement. I said conduct needed review. You mentioned we, I said. He looked at Paige. Are you really going to stand there and write down family words like they mean something? Paige did not answer. She kept writing. That annoyed him more than if she had argued. He stepped farther into the room and pulled out the client chair beside the one my mother had used, turning it backward before straddling it like we were in somebody's garage instead of my office. That was his usual move. Reduce the room, make professionalism feel performative. Pretend the other person was uptight for insisting facts had edges. You had one job, he said to me. You were supposed to help contain the condo mess. I was supposed to stay out of it. You were supposed to protect family. I was supposed to protect my license. His voice sharpened. By letting me get buried? There it was. Not principle, not concern. Exposure. 6 months earlier, Nolan had put earnest money into a riverfront condo conversion through a friend of a friend who called himself a developer and dressed like a venture fund brochure. The permit stalled, the lender pulled back, and suddenly the short bridge Nolan kept talking about became a crater. He wanted me to write a letter that would make it look as though investor funds were being held in a lawyer-supervised review process. Not because they were, because it sounded calming. I had refused in less than 30 seconds. My mother had called me cruel. Now, both of them were in my office trying to dress retaliation up as ethics. You told me to use proper channels, Nolan said. So I did. No, I said. You used my name. He leaned one forearm over the back of the chair and smiled again. That complaint was only to get your attention. I went still. Oh, not because of the words, because of how easily he said them. Only to get your attention. As if a forged disciplinary filing was a voicemail. As if walking a licensed attorney toward reputational harm before business hours was a parenting technique. Dana spoke on the line before I could. Ms. Sloan, would you like that statement included as well? Yes, I said. Do not put words in my mouth. Nolan snapped toward the phone. I don't have to, I said. You brought your own. He opened his mouth again, but I cut across him. Nolan, what exactly were you trying to get my attention about? He looked at our mother first. That told me almost as much as anything else had. Then he said, the trust account. Paige's pen stopped. I stared at him. What about it? You made it impossible to move anything, he said. You locked every route. I felt something cold and flat settle in the center of my chest. Not fear, structure. Because once he said trust account, the complaint language made full sense. Contact with represented parties, alteration of settlement distributions, urgent review, records preservation. Those were not random accusations. They were pressure points designed to make a bank, a regulator, or an insurer pay attention before breakfast. What did you do? I asked. Nolan's expression changed. Not much. Just enough to tell me I had finally reached the real thing. Then he said, you should call your bank. I looked at my desk phone, then at Paige, then back at him. My mother finally spoke. Evelyn, This can still stay private if you stop acting self-righteous. I ignored her and reached for my contact list. My IOLTA account was held at Mercer Fidelity, a regional bank with a very competent legal banking division and a fraud team that did not waste time when the words attorney trust appeared anywhere in a case note. I had a direct line from my relationship manager because lawyers who touch client funds learn quickly that generic customer service is where urgency goes to die. I called Andrea Bell and put her on speaker. She answered on the second ring. "Evelyn, I was about to call you." Of course she was. "Go ahead," I said. There was no warmth in her voice when she spoke again. "We placed a protective review flag on your trust portal at 6:40 this morning. No freeze, but restricted credential changes until we verify an overnight access event." Nolan shifted. "Not much. Enough." "What kind of access event?" I asked. "Done 2 failed online banking credential reset attempts," Andrea said. "Then a phone call to legal banking from someone claiming to be your accounting administrator. They asked for replacement credentials, a ledger export, and the process for initiating a hold without notifying the account holder." The room went very quiet. Even Dana stayed silent on the other line. I asked, "Did they identify themselves by name?" Andrea answered immediately. "Yes, they first identified as Marissa from Sloan Legal, then corrected to Mara in bookkeeping. I did not have a Marissa. I did not have a Mara. I did my own bookkeeping review with an outside accountant twice a month, and everybody who needed to know that knew it." "What callback number did they provide?" I asked. I already knew before she answered. Andrea read it anyway, and it ended in 9184, the same number from the bar complaint. Nolan looked down at the carpet. My mother stared at him so fast it was almost a flinch. Andrea kept going. The caller could not answer the security questions. They then asked whether a relative who was financially exposed could report irregularities in order to trigger an immediate hold. The banker escalated the call to fraud review instead. For the first time since she walked into my office, my mother looked old. Not weak, not fragile. Just older than she had looked an hour earlier because the strategy she thought was elegant had started generating logs in too many departments. "Do you have notes on the online attempts?" I asked. "Yes," Andrea said. "External browser, late night session, no successful login, device fingerprint not recognized. Well, we also have the recorded phone call and the fraud escalation notes. Preserve all of it. Already done." I took a slow breath. "Read me the escalation note." Keyboard clicks. Then Andrea's voice turned even flatter. Caller inquired whether attorney trust funds could be restricted based on family complaint before counsel had time to move assets. Caller appeared unfamiliar with law firm account structure. Fraud review initiated. Account holder to verify immediately. That was the moment Nolan stopped pretending this was about ethics. He stood up too fast and pointed at the phone. "You people protect each other. That's all this is." "No," I said. "They protect records." "You were going to bury me in paperwork and definitions. You tried to use my license and my clients to patch a bad deal." He laughed once sharply. "Your clients? There it is." I stared at him. "Yes," I said. "My clients. The people whose money does not belong to you." My mother stepped in then, finally abandoning the polished stillness she had worn all morning. "Nolan was desperate," she said. "You knew that." I turned to her. "So you forged my signature and walked him toward my trust account." She lifted one shoulder. "I signed what needed to be signed." Paige looked up so quickly I heard the paper shift under her hand. Dana, still on the line, said, "Ms. Sloan, for intake purposes, would you like that statement repeated back into the record?" My mother's head snapped toward the phone. I answered before she could. "Yes." Dana read it cleanly. Third-party speaker states, quote, "I signed what needed to be signed," end quote. In response to inquiry regarding complaint submission under attorney's name. My mother's face changed then. Not much. Just enough to tell me she had finally understood what speakerphones, notes, case logs, and calm voices do when you keep feeding them admissions. Nolan saw it too, and he moved immediately to what people like him always do when the first version collapses. He reached into the inside pocket of his quarter zip and pulled out a large, flat envelope. "I didn't come here to argue about the bank," he said. The envelope had a courthouse return label in the upper corner. Stamped. Filed. Not draft. He laid it on my desk and tapped it once with 2 fingers. "If the bank route didn't work," he said, "the court route will." I did not touch the envelope. "What is it?" He smiled again, but this time there was anger in it. "Ah, an emergency petition," he said. "Signed yesterday. Filed this morning. Dad finally decided he was done protecting you." I looked at the return label again. Probate and protective proceedings. My father had been recovering from surgery for the last 2 weeks and was on pain medication strong enough to make him repeat the same weather report twice at lunch. I looked up slowly. "What did you make him sign?" Nolan's answer came too fast. Nothing he didn't understand. And that was how I knew whatever was in the envelope was worse than the complaint, because my brother had not come to my office to defend our mother. He'd come to keep me busy until the courthouse filing was already on the docket. I pulled the envelope toward me with 2 fingers and opened it over my desk blotter. Nolan had been right about one thing. It was filed. On not threatened, not drafted, filed. The caption read, "In the matter of Thomas Caldwell emergency petition for temporary protective relief, appointment of interim conservator, and preservation of financial records." My father's full name sat at the top in bold, followed by Nolan's name as proposed interim conservator. I kept reading. The petition claimed my father was recovering from surgery, mentally vulnerable, under improper pressure from me, and at risk of financial exploitation involving withheld real estate records and firm-controlled documents. It asked the court to appoint Nolan temporary conservator over my father's financial affairs, restrain me from contacting my father outside monitored settings, and order immediate turnover of any Caldwell family or Caldwell Property Group records in my possession. When then I hit the line that made my jaw lock. The filing also claimed I had initiated self-reporting to disciplinary authorities and may destroy evidence before lawful inspection. Nolan had tied the forged bar complaint to the court petition. He had used one fake institutional event to justify a second. Paige came around my desk and read over my shoulder while keeping enough distance not to crowd me. "Hearing time?" 11:30, I said. She checked the wall clock. 10:14. Less than 80 minutes. My mother finally moved away from the window. "If you stop turning everything into war, this can still be handled quietly." I looked up at her. "Wicca, you filed an emergency petition accusing me of exploiting a medicated patient who happens to be my father. It says what needed to be said. It says what helps Nolan." Nolan leaned back against the credenza like he was watching a deposition go badly for the other side. "You can explain all of that to the judge." I turned the page. Attached to the petition was a declaration supposedly signed by my father the night before, verifying that he feared I would interfere with family business documents and move records through my firm if the court did not intervene immediately. At the bottom sat a remote notarization block with a transaction number, a digital seal, and a completion time of 9:18 p.m. Sunday. I stared at the time. 9:18. And my father had called me at 9:22 Sunday night and left me a voicemail asking whether post-surgery antibiotics could be taken with ginger tea. He sounded slow, groggy, and annoyed that the television remote kept disappearing into the recliner cushions. He had ended the voicemail by asking if I could remind him where he put the nurse's after-hours number. That was not a man completing a clean emergency declaration with a remote online notary 4 minutes earlier. I opened my voicemail archive, found the message, and put one earbud in long enough to confirm the timestamp. 9:22 p.m. I set the phone down. "Nolan," I said, "did you sit next to Dad while he signed this?" He folded his arms. He knew exactly what it was. My mother answered before I could ask again. He was tired. He knew we helped him. That word was doing a lot of work. I reached for my desk phone and dialed the probate clerk's office. A clerk named Maribel answered, and after I gave the case caption and docket number, I heard the familiar clicking of someone opening a file she had not expected to matter to anybody until lunch. "Yes, counsel," she said. "The petition is on for emergency review at 11:30 before Judge Serrano. Has any temporary order been signed?" "Not at this time." "Good. Has service issued?" A courtesy copy was transmitted to the civil deputy desk because the petition requested same-day enforcement if relief is granted. Nolan's expression sharpened. He had expected the deputy piece to scare me. It did, just not in the direction he wanted. I said, "Well, I need the exact basis asserted for emergency handling." Maribel read directly from the internal note. "Alleged imminent destruction or movement of financial records following disciplinary self-report by respondent attorney." There it was again. The fake bar complaint was not collateral damage. It was the engine. "Was the petition filed by counsel?" I asked. "No, counsel. Self-represented e-file." "Under whose account?" Pause. More clicking. Then Maribel said, "The registered filer is Nolan Caldwell." I looked at my brother. He looked back at me without blinking. "Any alternate contact listed for emergency coordination?" I asked. She hesitated. "I can read the public contact line." "Please." She did. The callback number ended in 9184, the same number from the bar complaint, the same number given to my bank. Aunt Paige closed her eyes for 1 second, then opened them and wrote it down anyway. "Thank you," I said. "One more question. The declaration attached to the petition uses a remote notarization certificate. Is the transaction number visible in the clerk copy?" "Yes." "Read it to me." She did. I wrote it down, thanked her, ended the call, and dialed the compliance line for the remote notarization platform listed on the certificate block. My mother saw the number on the page and stepped forward. "Evelyn," she said, "enough." I held up one hand without looking at her. A compliance analyst answered after 2 transfers. Her name was Priya. I gave her the transaction number, the signatory name, and the date. "I only need status verification," I said. "I'm counsel reviewing a filed declaration." She asked me to hold. No one in the room said a word while the line played soft piano. When she came back, her tone had changed the way people's tones change when they stop looking at a normal account issue and start looking at a problem they know will end up in a report. "Ma'am," she said, "the transaction number you provided does not correspond to a completed notarization for Thomas Caldwell." I looked up slowly. Nolan stopped leaning on the credenza. "What does it correspond to?" I asked. "An attempted remote session initiated Sunday evening," she said. "Identity verification failed before completion. No final notarized document was issued from that session." Paige's pen froze, then started moving again. I asked, "Can you see the access origin?" "We can see the initiating IP range and device note," Priya said. The session originated from a commercial office network identified in the registration field as Caldwell Property Group Conference Wi-Fi." My mother closed her eyes, just once, then opened them. I could almost hear the room rearranging itself around that fact. No completed notarization, failed identity verification, Caldwell Property Group Network. "What happened after the session failed?" I asked. Priya clicked through something else. "It appears 3 identity prompts failed. The session was closed. There was no completed notarial act, no digital completion record, and no issued final seal tied to that transaction number." I looked back down at the declaration on my desk. The digital seal was right there on the page. Clean, professional, entirely false. "No, can you email a compliance confirmation stating that no completed notarization exists for that transaction number?" I asked. "We can send a status verification letter to the signer or in response to legal process. I am the respondent in the pending court matter and the daughter of the purported signer. The document is being used in an emergency filing right now." A pause. Then she said, "I can send a limited verification stating only that the reference transaction did not complete and no final notarial certificate was issued. Please give me your email." I gave it to her. My mother made a small sound in her throat, almost like she wanted to interrupt and thought better of it. Nolan did not. "That proves nothing," he said too fast. "Dad signed it in person too." "In person with whom?" I asked. He said nothing. "When with the notary that doesn't exist?" I asked. He pushed off the credenza. "You always twist process." "No," I said. "You forge it." The email hit my inbox less than a minute later. Subject line: Transaction Status Verification. I opened it and read the body once, then turned the monitor so Paige could see. The compliance letter was short, sterile, and devastating. It confirmed that the transaction number attached to the declaration in the probate filing did not result in any completed remote online notarization, and that no final certificate was issued by the platform for Thomas Caldwell on the reference session. Paige printed it without asking. I looked at the clock again. 10:37. Enough time to get to the courthouse, not enough time for them to invent a third version. I stood up, took the petition, the compliance printout, and the bar intake notes and the bank fraud note, and slid all of it into my litigation folder. "Nolan," I said, "call Dad right now." His face changed. There it was. Not bravado, not outrage, fear. "Why?" he asked. "Because when Judge Serrano asks whether your emergency declaration is real, I want to know whether you plan to keep lying while looking at him." My mother stepped in front of him slightly, not enough to block him, just enough to answer for him the way she had all morning. "Thomas is resting." I picked up my car keys. "Then you better hope he wakes up before the judge does." We were halfway to the courthouse when the clerk from Judge Serrano's chambers called my cell. I answered on Bluetooth while Paige sat beside me with the folder open on her lap. "Miss Sloan," the clerk said, "the court has reviewed the emergency packet. Judge Serrano is requiring the original declarant and the notarizing party to appear in person if the petitioner intends to rely on that declaration." Paige looked at me. I tightened my grip on the wheel. Because there was no notarizing party to bring, and if my father walked into that courtroom confused, medicated, or honest, the entire thing would come apart in front of a judge with both families present. By the time Paige and I reached probate, Nolan and my mother were already outside Department 7. They were not alone. My father was there in a wheelchair wearing the same navy cardigan he wore when he did not want to talk to anyone. His skin looked gray under the courthouse lights. His hospital wristband was gone, but the white tape mark from a recent IV still showed faintly near his right hand. My mother stood behind him with both hands on the chair handles like she was presenting him, not helping him. There was no notary. That told me almost everything before the hearing even started. Judge Serrano took the bench at 11:32 and looked irritated before anyone said a word. Emergency calendars do that to judges. They are full of people who want speed more than truth. Nolan appeared on his own behalf. I appeared for myself. My father sat beside him in the gallery rail area with my mother, half turned toward him, as if she could still coach his face. The judge opened the file, scanned the petition, then looked up. "Mr. Caldwell," he said, "my clerk advised Chambers that your petition relies on a remote notarized declaration. Is the notarizing party present?" "No, Your Honor," Nolan said. "The declaration is complete on its face." "It may be complete on its face," Judge Serrano said, "but Chambers asked for the notarizing party to appear if you intended to rely on it." Nolan tried to smile. "We were not able to secure that." Judge Serrano did not smile back. That is not a phrase I enjoy in emergency matters. Then he turned to me. Miss Sloan? I stood. Your Honor, I have a limited verification from the remote notarization platform stating that the transaction number on the attached declaration did not result in any completed notarization and that no final certificate was issued. I also have records showing the petition's emergency theory relies on a disciplinary self-report that was fraudulently filed overnight under my name from a third-party network tied to my mother's office. The courtroom changed shape when I said that. Not physically, socially. What had looked like a messy family dispute now sounded like something with audit trails. I handed the compliance letter to the bailiff, who carried it to the bench. Then I handed up the bar intake notes, the bank fraud note, and the public callback number page from the e-file record. Judge Serrano read the compliance letter once, then again more slowly. Mr. Caldwell, he said, do you have any basis to dispute this platform verification? Nolan's voice lost half a step. Now, my father signed the declaration. That was not my question. He understood it. That was not my question either. The judge lifted the declaration from the petition packet. This document bears a notarial certificate tied to a transaction number that, according to the platform, never completed. So I will ask you one more time. Do you have any basis to dispute the verification that no completed notarization occurred? Nolan looked at my mother. That was his mistake, because judges know that look. He said, not at this time. Judge Serrano set the paper down and turned to my father. Mr. Caldwell, did you review this emergency petition before it was filed? My father blinked twice, slowly, then looked at Nolan like he was trying to place him inside a room he no longer trusted. I signed something on a tablet, he said. Nolan said it was for insurance and records after surgery. Nolan straightened. Dad, Judge Serrano raised one hand. Silence fell instantly. My father kept going. I did not read all this, he said, touching the petition packet with 2 fingers when the bailiff brought it to him. I did not ask for any conservator. I did not ask the court to stop my daughter from seeing me. My mother leaned forward. Thomas, you are in pain. Mrs. Caldwell, the judge said, without looking at her. You are not speaking right now. Then he asked my father, do you believe your daughter Evelyn is taking advantage of you financially? My father looked at me then. For 1 second, I was not 36, standing in a courthouse in a navy suit. I was 16 again, waiting to see whether he would let my mother define the room. He cleared his throat. I know, he said. She's the only one who kept telling me not to sign things when I was medicated. The silence after that was heavier than any shouting could have been. Judge Serrano went back to the bench packet. Mr. Caldwell, he said to Nolan, this court will not grant emergency relief on a declaration the purported signer says he did not review, and a notarization platform says never completed. Nolan started talking anyway. Your Honor, there are financial records at risk, and she admitted there are family documents in her firm. No, I said. I admitted the opposite. Judge Serrano looked at him over the top of his glasses. And I have before me a note from bar intake indicating a disciplinary submission was made under Miss Sloan's name using credentials inconsistent with her registration, and along with banknotes reflecting attempts to access or restrict an attorney trust structure using a callback number that appears again in your court filing. He tapped the packet once. Do you understand how serious that looks? Nolan's jaw tightened. My mother was very still. Judge Serrano denied the emergency petition from the bench. Then he did 3 things in a row so quickly that Nolan did not seem to understand the hearing was already over in any meaningful sense. First, he ordered the declaration and attached certificate preserved as part of the court record and flagged for authenticity review. Second, he referred the matter to the probate investigator and directed the clerk to transmit the compliance letter and hearing minute order to county council. Third, or he ordered Nolan to pay my reasonable fees and costs for emergency response, with the amount to be set on submission if not agreed. Then he looked directly at my mother for the first time. If either of you attempts to refile based on the same defective paper, or attempts to isolate Mr. Caldwell from independent review while he is recovering, I will consider protective measures for him rather than from him. That landed, because it meant the court had stopped seeing my father as the reason for the petition and started seeing him as another person they might have used. Outside the courtroom, two things happened almost at once. The probate investigator asked my father if he was willing to speak privately without family pressure. He said yes, and my mother finally lost the calm voice. Not loudly, she did not scream in the hallway, and she did something more revealing. She turned to Nolan and hissed, "I told you to wait." Not "I told you not to do it. I told you to wait." Paige heard it. So did the deputy standing 5 feet away. I went downstairs, sat on a stone bench near the security line, and called the state bar back while the hearing was still fresh in the system. Dana added the court outcome to the identity misuse note. By late afternoon, the complaint was locked permanently as a fraudulent submission, not a disciplinary matter. It never touched my public record. It never became an investigation against me. It became evidence. Then I called Andrea at the bank. By then, fraud had already escalated the overnight call recording and the failed credential reset attempts for full review. No money ever moved. No client funds left my trust account. No hold was placed. No ledger export was released. The only thing they succeeded in generating was a cleaner trail. That week moved fast after that. The bar's identity unit requested a formal packet from me, so I gave them everything. The intake notes, the source tag from my mother's office, Wi-Fi, the copied signature image reference, the building footage, the guest pass entry, the office network history showing the Sunday night device, and a declaration from my network administrator about the scan-to-email failures and USB export event. Mercer Fidelity gave me the fraud note, the recorded call summary, and confirmation that the same callback number had been used in the bank contact and the court filing. The probate clerk certified the petition packet and the hearing minute order. Tapria's platform verification established that the notarization certificate was fiction. When you lay those things side by side, a family story turns into a sequence. And once it becomes a sequence, people outside the family stop arguing about feelings and start naming conduct. About 3 weeks later, a detective from the County Economic Crimes Unit interviewed me in a conference room at my office. He was patient, organized, and very interested in one detail more than any other. The way the bar complaint, the bank inquiry, and the probate petition all use the same callback number and all push toward one result: discredit me fast enough to get between me and any records Nolan wanted. By then, he had already subpoenaed additional metadata. He did not tell me everything he had, but he told me enough. That the USB export from my office network had not yielded much because the old scanner station they used could not reach my active client drive without my credentials. What my mother had actually taken were outdated contact sheets, an old signature image, and 2 stale settlement drafts from a closed matter that had nothing to do with Nolan. That was why the complaint language sounded legal but wrong. It had been built by somebody imitating process, not understanding it. The more painful piece was my father. The probate investigator arranged an independent meeting with him and later recommended a temporary neutral monitor for his financial paperwork during recovery. Not because he was incompetent, but because he was medicated, tired, and too easy to steer by the people around him. My father agreed, and he also signed a narrow written instruction that no family member, not me, not Nolan, not my mother, was to submit legal or financial paperwork in his name without independent review from his physician or outside counsel while he recovered. That should have felt like a defeat. It did not. It felt like the first honest document in the whole mess. My father apologized to me about a month later. Not beautifully, not in the way movies do it. He sat in the rehab garden with a paper cup of bad coffee and said, "I should have shut her down years ago." That was all. But from him, it was almost a paragraph. He later gave a recorded statement confirming that on Sunday night, Nolan told him the tablet signature was for post-surgery insurance coordination and record access. He said he never read an emergency petition, never asked for a conservator, and never authorized anyone to accuse me of exploiting him. That statement mattered more than anything emotional could have. As for my mother, the consequences hit her in layers. The first layer was professional. Caldwell Property Group conducted an internal compliance review once law enforcement requested preservation on the office guest network and device registration records. My mother was not the broker of record, but she was still licensed and still using office infrastructure. By the end of that review, she was cut off from company systems and forced out. 2 months later, the state licensing board opened its own inquiry after the false declaration and identity-based filing records were shared through the proper channels. The second layer was civil. My emergency response fees, hearing costs, security review, account remediation. Warrant outside counsel consultation were not small. Nolan refused to stipulate to the amount, so I submitted it. The court awarded me just over $32,000 in fees and costs against him from the false emergency filing. Later, in a separate civil resolution tied to the forged complaint and unauthorized office access, I recovered additional costs tied to security upgrades, forensic review, and lost billable time. I did not get rich from it. That was never the point. The point was that cleaning up after their fraud did not come out of my client's money or my pocket. The third layer was criminal exposure. About 4 months after the hearing, the county filed charges against Nolan related to identity misuse, false filing, and attempted fraudulent access tied to the bank and the disciplinary complaint. My mother was charged too, though on a narrower theory tied to the unauthorized use of my identifying information, office access, and her role in the false submission chain. I will not pretend every count survived exactly as filed. Cases narrow, people negotiate, evidence gets organized into what prosecutors can prove most cleanly, but neither of them walked away untouched. Nolan took a plea. He admitted enough to avoid a trial that would have put the bank call, the complaint packet, the fake notary sequence, and my father's recovery records in one public timeline. He was ordered to serve custody time, followed by supervision, restitution, and a prohibition on acting in any fiduciary or representative capacity for my father. He also ended up facing 2 civil investor claims from the condo mess he had been trying to hide in the first place. The last I heard, he was living in a rented 1-bedroom outside the county line, selling equipment on consignment and blaming everybody but himself in exactly the same voice. My mother did not go to prison for years. Real life is not written that cleanly, but she did not escape either. She entered a plea that left a fraud-related record where before she had nothing but charm and posture. She paid restitution, lost work, spent months under restrictions, and learned very quickly that older women with polished handbags do not look harmless to compliance officers once their names start appearing next to forged submissions and office network logs. Her social world shrank fast after that. Some people are not built for shame. They survive by staying in motion and keeping witnesses rotating. Once the witness pool hardens, they have nowhere comfortable to stand. My father sold the old house the following spring, not because anyone forced him to, because he wanted distance from rooms where every document felt contaminated. He moved into a smaller place with better medical access and signed new estate documents through independent counsel I did not recommend and did not supervise. That was important to both of us. He kept contact with me. He did not keep the same contact with Nolan. With my mother, it became intermittent and formal. As for me, my firm did not collapse. It got quieter, stronger, and more careful. The Harpers, the clients who were sitting in conference room A while my mother sat in my office and announced that I needed discipline, never left. They heard more than I wanted them to hear that morning. But they also saw exactly how I handled pressure, by locking facts down before emotion could fog them. They signed with me that week and later sent 2 of their closest referrals to my firm. I promoted Paige within 3 months. That was not charity. She earned it. She preserved notes, called for logs, kept her face neutral, and understood before some lawyers do that proof is fragile for about 15 minutes and then gone forever if nobody thinks clearly. I changed our office security after that. New access rules, new scanner segregation, no casual family entry, no exceptions because someone says mother at a front desk. It cost money. It bought peace. The strangest part came much later. One evening, after everyone had gone home, I opened the secure folder where I kept the final closure letters, the bar's fraud lock notation, the bank's confirmation of no loss, the court's fee award, the compliance verification, the criminal disposition summaries, the civil repayment record. I looked at all of it for a long time, not because I was reliving the worst part, because I was looking at the shape of what had really happened. My mother thought a copied signature made her me. Nolan thought legal words arranged in the right order became truth if they reached the right office fast enough. They both believed institutions were just bigger rooms to manipulate. They were wrong. Institutions are imperfect. Slow, sometimes. Annoying, often. But when you force enough of them to touch the same lie, the lie starts shedding pieces everywhere. That was the part they never understood. I did not beat them by being louder. I beat them by making them repeat themselves in systems that kept notes. Hi, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the story. If something like this happened to you, what would you do? Would you confront your family immediately, or would you stay calm and start collecting proof first? I'd really like to know what you think. Tell me in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next video.